Welcome back to Wasatch Modeler. Today I am going to show you a continuation of the previous video where we were gluing stuff together. And when we were gluing things together, we noticed that there was some seams that kind of need to be filled and some different stuff that we needed to fill in some gaps and make those joins look pretty. So we are going to try to look at some different techniques of how to fill in those seams and specifically make sure that we don't have any of those ghost seams coming back. So for an in-depth review of all the different products and how they function, it pop up somewhere here-ish. Now in today's video, I'm going to show you some more situation-based, because it kind of depends on what I'm going to use in certain circumstances, depending on, what kind of gap we have. So let's look at the contenders here. First one I've got here is a little bit of a potion of Sprue Goo. No, that's not right. Sprue Goo. And so I've got that, but sadly I'm not going to use it. Now I put that in here because it is definitely useful, definitely a good product that you can create on your own, so it's also kind of recycling. However, I'm impatient. This takes quite a while for it to actually do its stuff. I don't have time for that. So we're not going to show you that today. For certain small itty-bitty cracks and some of the panel lines, eventually what we're going to use is this all-clad microfiller primer. It doesn't work too well as a microfiller and primer, but it is amazing stuff. You'll hear Will Pattison just raving about this stuff. So we'll use that. There's going to be certain situations where a good acrylic plastic putty like these are going to work really well, and because we can clean it up with water. And so we're going to be using those in certain situations. However, disadvantage on there, sanding. Then, new favorite of mine, going into these black CA glues. They work really good for filling in gaps, and you can sand them. You can kind of see how much you put on because it's black. So it's really cool. Then probably the high-tech out of all of them is this UV curing glue. This stuff I got from Cabela's a long time ago. Works well. Haven't been able to really locate the same stuff since then. But there's a lot of different UV curing glue that similar stuff. Okay, so for our first candidate, we get into some of the work that we're doing on this B17 that has all sorts of different gaps that are going to show up. Now, did the B17 actually have a panel line there? I think it did. So, but we're still going to fill it in anyway. There is certain parts where I don't think there would be a panel line, so we definitely need to do some filling in. So for this, my go-to. Alright, so I'm just going to use this Bob Smith stuff. Eventually I'll switch over to some of the more expensive MIG stuff and see how that works. But I'm going to just stick with this for the moment. And I'm just going to run it along there. That's good for the start. Take a toothpick and I can move it around. Looks horrible at first, but look, you can just kind of clean it away until you're left with what you want. You can also get into some CA remover and try to remove some of the excess with that, but that's good enough for now. I'm going to sand it, so that's good enough. Let's try just put a dab. And you just need a little bit to just kind of cover over that crack, make sure that nothing activates it again and fills it, opens it up again, anything like that. There's that. In the back, we've got a little bit more of a hole. Now, probably be a little more clean with this if I knew I was going to have to come back and do some panel lines anyway, so it's good enough. Okay, while that's drying, let's look at some of the others. Right. So with this wing root here, with that wing root where you got this crack in there, that is a good candidate for the UV glue. So I'm going to put a dab of it on this plastic because I want to make sure this Tank Craft mat lasts as long as possible. Take a toothpick, cocktail stick, whatever you want to call it, and then we're just going to apply in there. First, pretty gloppy. Look at all that excess. But here's the magic. I have pretty much unlimited amount of time to go over and fix that up. So I can Q-tip. And then I think that's good for that layer. I'm going to do some more touch-up. So now, UV cure. Give that a couple seconds. And now it's going to stick. So now, do a little more. And kind of do a little bit of a blending in. Now we're going to get into some small sanding sponge there as well. But clean up as much as we can. Looks pretty good. Alright, so now I have my sanding sponge attached to hobby forceps, I guess. I don't know what, locking pliers. And we're going to sand that. I've got a bit too fine of a grit. It doesn't seem to be really doing too much. Let me grab one of these sticks. So the UV curing glue doesn't really adhere too well, but it is sandable. And if you get used to it, it can work pretty well. So there's that. It's not going to be reacting to any of the solvents coming into it. So that's pretty good. Okay, so let's go on to our other situation. So I've got this Supermarine S5. I've already done a little bit with this, and we'll show you probably what the result is after, but I put some UV glue. There's all sorts of cracks that had to be filled in there. You can kind of see how now it's smoothed up quite a bit. So that worked out pretty well for there. So after sanding, it's, not bad. We'll have to put some primer on it and see what it'll actually look like once some paint's on it. But I want to show you. Look at that. Man, what are we going to do there? Easy fix. So for that, where I'm not going to do any sanding, this plastic putty works out real well. Alright, so I can just take some, glob it in. Can be kind of messy with it. Sometimes you want to make sure you have enough. Let's get it in there. Nice. Make sure it's filling up those voids. As we're going to have to do it again. Now, first, looks horrible. But, dollop of water on a Q-tip. So, there you go. And as long as I'm not needing to do a bunch of sanding or anything like that, that should hold up pretty well. And you won't know that there was just a gigantic gap there. All right, for our last contestant, so I've got this black primer microfiller ALC 309. Like I said, don't care for it as a primer, but when you put it into a little bottle like this, it is pretty magical for certain areas on here. So you can see how I'm going to have to redo some of these panel lines, how they're not lining up. You can do that with this. All right, so just filling in. Then I can sand this later and won't have any clue. And let's try. Got a big ol' sink mark. See if that does anything. Okay, so I'll let that sit, sand it off. We'll take a look at the result. Now for that last one, some of you might be thinking it's pretty gruesome, a lot of glop, a lot of material that we're putting on, a lot of sanding away the details. So what's one way that you can do it when you have something like this nice Edward kit, where you want to make sure that those surface details are all nice and restored, or don't get lost. So what I'm going to do is I've just got some tape here. I'm going to use the tape to kind of protect it. I put them on each side. Okay, and there we go. So just put this tape on the sides there. And I can clean up some of this excess Q-tip or cocktail stick or something. So we just need a little bit in those cracks, get them filled up. All right, so we'll sand that. You can see they're all just sequestered to that spot there. So another part is just on the top. So we got these, we're going to fill in the top of that cowling. Okay, so tape is added. Okay, and there's that. So I will let that dry, and then we're going to come back and sand it. And should have minimized panel line detail loss. Okay, let's take a look at our progress here. So we got the Schneider Cup guy. We were using the Vallejo putty on, so that worked out pretty well. UV glue in that join needs a little bit of polishing in there, but it's working well. Leading edge looking pretty good. B26. Good. I think I need to clean up some sanding marks, and in the next video what we're going to work on is restoring those panel lines that were lost. The B17, a few bits that need to be touched up. I can see like right there, but part of that, I think that hole is actually going to be a hole for an antenna, so I'm not too worried there. Looking good. Making some good progress, so put some more primer on that, get them fixed. Alright, so in conclusion, there's a lot of different tools at our disposal, and each of them have their own purpose. I would not really use this perfect plastic putty for situations where I need to sand down, but if I want to just kind of level surface and just clean it away with water, it's good for that. Sprue Goo works out real well, but I'm impatient. But that one, rock hard, pretty good tool. The all-clad stuff works good for just some small imperfections that you just want to dab in and then sand off. love going into the different black CA to do some hardcore work where I'm filling in some big seams, and I don't want them to come back as ghost seams. Now, then UV glue. This works really well for tight corners and different cracks where I just want to put it in there and then shine a light and have it harden and potentially come back and sand. So there's not one that I would use for like every purpose, right? Just like I wouldn't use a hammer for a screw. So hopefully you take away something from this. If you have any other opinions or stuff I'm missing, definitely put into the chat below. And we'll see you in the next one.